Have you ever noticed how loud the world has become? Everyone seems to be in a race to say more, show more, post more. Every thought, every plan, every emotion, broadcasted in real time for anyone who will listen. It's as if silence has become uncomfortable and privacy, a thing of the past. But here's something the Stoics knew, something timeless. The more you reveal to the world, the more you risk giving it control. And the truly wise? They've learned that not everything is meant to be shared. Not every truth deserves an audience. Not every feeling needs to be explained to be understood, because there's a difference between secrecy and sovereignty. We're not talking about hiding out of fear. We're talking about protecting your clarity, preserving your energy, and honoring what's sacred. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes with restraint. It's the strength of someone who's mastered the art of silence, not because they're afraid to speak, but because they've learned the value of listening. Someone who doesn't rush to prove themselves because they already know who they are. Someone who doesn't need to announce every move, because they trust that real power isn't found in performance, it's found in presence. You see, the Stoics believed that a wise person doesn't speak just to be heard. They speak when it matters. They don't expose their plans to the world in hopes of applause. They build in silence and let the results do the talking. In today's hyper-connected world, that kind of restraint almost feels rebellious. We're encouraged to share everything, our goals, our struggles, our relationships, our trauma, as if constant exposure equals authenticity. But the truth is, when you share too much, too soon, you give people the ability to shape your direction before it's fully formed. Imagine a seed just beginning to grow. What happens if you dig it up every day to show it off? It never takes root. It never has a chance to become strong. But hidden beneath the surface, in stillness and solitude, that's where real growth happens. And the same goes for your goals, your healing, your transformation. The wise protect their process. They understand that silence isn't absence, it's intention. It's the space where peace lives and where strength is born. In a world obsessed with being seen, a wise person finds freedom in being grounded. They're not swayed by applause. They're not derailed by criticism. They walk with quiet conviction because they've built something within that no opinion can shake. Now let me ask you something real. Have you ever felt worse after oversharing? Maybe you told someone your dream, only to be met with doubt. Or you opened up about something personal and felt exposed instead of supported. That's not weakness. That's your intuition telling you. Some things are too sacred to be spoken. Before they're fully grown, you don't owe the world a constant update on your evolution. You owe yourself the protection of your energy, your ideas, your healing, because what is sacred, what is truly valuable, should be guarded, not displayed. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most revered Stoic philosophers, wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." What you allow into your mind shapes you. But just as importantly, what you let out of your mind, your words, your intentions, your fears, can also shape how others perceive and influence you. That's why the Stoics cultivated what they called an inner citadel, a space within that remained untouched by external noise, a fortress of peace, clarity, and purpose. And in that space they moved with deliberate action, not reaction. Now think about that for a second. What would it look like to live with that kind of intention? To move without explaining, to grow without performing, to speak less but with more impact. It's not about being mysterious, it's about being anchored. It's about knowing that true strength isn't loud, it's quiet, it's consistent, it's rooted in clarity. In fact, Epictetus, another Stoic master, once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Let that sink in. Are you willing to be misunderstood in the short term to protect your long-term purpose? Are you willing to look like you're doing nothing on the outside while building everything on the inside? because that's what the wise do. They don't compete for attention, they cultivate intention. They don't seek to impress, they seek to align. They don't overshare for approval, they guard their peace like a sacred flame. Now this doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean living in fear of connection. Quite the opposite. When you protect what matters most, you create space for genuine relationships, purposeful conversations, and authentic expression, not just noise. And most importantly, you begin to trust yourself more. You stop outsourcing your confidence, you stop looking for constant validation, and you start building something that no one can take from you: inner stability. So the next time you feel the urge to announce your next move, to vent your every emotion, or to explain your every decision, pause. Ask yourself, am I sharing this to connect or to be seen? Am I speaking from clarity or from fear? And if the answer points you toward silence, honor that, because silence isn't emptiness, it's power. And when you learn to sit with it, to grow inside of it, to protect it, you'll realize that what you once thought was weakness is actually one of the greatest strengths you'll ever know. Welcome to the Quiet Revolution. This is the way of the wise. Part 1. A wise person guards his silence. Let's begin with something that may sound simple, but in today's world, it's nothing short of revolutionary. A wise person guards his silence. Now you might ask, why silence? Why not speak up? Let the world know who you are, what you're building, where you're headed. Because here's the truth. Noise doesn't equal strength, and exposure doesn't equal progress. We live in a culture obsessed with visibility. We're told to document every step, announce every goal, and turn our lives into open books. But the wise, those who've walked through chaos without losing themselves, they know better. They understand that what grows quietly grows deeply. Think about this. How many times have you shared a new idea or goal with someone, and then immediately felt doubt creep in? Maybe they questioned it. Maybe they didn't seem impressed. Maybe they smiled. But deep down, they didn't believe in you. And that energy? It stuck. It made you second guess what felt so clear just hours before. This is why the wise choose silence when it comes to their vision. They don't need to broadcast their next move to feel validated. They don't lay their purpose bare for others to dissect. They act quietly, with conviction. Don't tell people your plans. Show them your results. That isn't just good advice. That's a code for protecting momentum. Because when you expose your plans too early, you invite energy that isn't always aligned. Judgment, jealousy, distraction, unsolicited opinions, and all of that noise. It pulls focus away from the mission. The wise know this. That's why they treat their goals like a sacred fire, hidden, guarded, slowly nurtured in silence, until it burns bright enough to light the world. But it's not just about keeping plans private. Silence also protects the mind. You see, a clear mind is a powerful tool, but it needs care, just like the body. And the wise understand the importance of what I like to call mental hygiene. Each night they reflect, they forgive. Not because others deserve it, but because resentment is poison, and forgiveness is purification. They don't let grudges fester overnight. They don't carry emotional clutter into the next day. Because when your heart is heavy, your mind is foggy, and clarity, like fire, struggles to burn through smoke. That's why the wise don't speak just to fill space. They speak with purpose, with awareness. They've internalized the old proverb, open your mouth only if what you're going to say is more beautiful than silence. Most people speak to react. The wise speak to connect. They know that every word shapes reality, so they speak less, but mean more. Now let's go deeper. Even in silence, the mind isn't always peaceful. It gets visited by doubt, by comparison, by regret. But the wise, they don't pretend those thoughts don't come. They simply don't let them stay. Because thoughts are like seeds. And the mind? It's the soil. Let a weed stay too long, and it multiplies. Doubt becomes insecurity. Regret becomes paralysis. Comparison becomes bitterness. That's why wise people tend their inner garden daily. When doubt appears, they question it. When comparison whispers, they disconnect. When regret knocks, they look at it, but don't invite it in for coffee. They know that creation is quiet, but destruction is loud. You don't hear the roots growing beneath the soil, but you'll hear the tree fall when it's not nurtured. That's the paradox of true strength. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's not performative. It's disciplined stillness. And here's where most people struggle. They confuse movement with meaning. They believe that being seen counts as being successful. But a man of purpose doesn't need the applause of the crowd. He doesn't need validation to know he's on the right path. He wakes up with intention, he moves with direction, and he lets the results, not the noise, do the talking. You see, wisdom is a quiet rebellion against a world obsessed with attention, and in a world that demands performance. The wise choose presence. They don't explain every move, they don't perform their healing, they don't market their transformation. They live it. They know that what is sacred must be protected, not paraded. Because some things are simply too meaningful to be diluted by the opinions of those who haven't earned access. Their silence isn't avoidance, it's sovereignty. They walk with peace, not because life is easy, but because their purpose is louder than the chaos. So if you've ever felt the pressure to speak before you're ready, to reveal a dream that's still taking shape, or to prove something just to feel seen, take a breath. You don't owe the world an explanation. You owe yourself protection. Protect your vision while it's still forming. Guard your thoughts like a gatekeeper guards a castle, and speak with purpose only when the silence is ready to be broken. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's what it means to guard your silence like a wise person. Part 2. A wise person transforms pain into peace. Let me ask you something that might hit close to home. Have you ever carried pain so quietly? No one even knew you were hurting? You smiled at work. You laughed with friends. You showed up like everything was fine. But inside, it felt like something was breaking. If you've ever felt that, I want you to hear this. You're not weak. You're wise. Because the wise have learned something most people spend their whole lives avoiding. Pain is part of the path. The Stoics had a saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And it's more than just a phrase, it's a way of life. You see, pain will visit all of us. Life will disappoint you. People will betray you. You'll face rejection, failure, loss. Some of it sudden, some of it slow. But the difference between someone who's broken by pain and someone who's refined by it, it's perspective. The wise do not let pain define them. They let it refine them. They treat pain not as a prison, but as a teacher. They ask questions like, what is this pain trying to show me? What lesson is hidden inside this hurt? Because the truth is, some of our greatest breakthroughs come wrapped in heartbreak. Some of our deepest wisdom is born from our darkest seasons. The wise know this. They don't run from pain. They sit with it. They listen. And then they rise. But here's what sets them apart. They don't wear their pain as a badge. They don't use it to seek sympathy or attention. When the wise are hurting, they don't broadcast it. They carry it quietly with grace. Not because they're pretending, but because they understand something powerful. The world can't always fix what you're feeling. So why hand your healing over to people who were never meant to hold it? Their smile. It's not fake. It's a decision not to burden others with what they can't solve. A choice to keep walking even when it hurts. That's not denial, that's strength. True strength isn't loud, it doesn't need to scream, look how much I'm struggling. Sometimes strength sounds like silence. Sometimes it looks like someone showing up when no one knew how heavy the day really was. And if that's ever been you, walking through pain without applause, just know, that's the mark of wisdom. The wise also understand something else. Not every battle is worth fighting. They don't argue with fools. They don't chase after people who lie, gossip, or twist the truth. They've accepted that trying to control every narrative is not only exhausting, it's useless. Let people misunderstand you. Let them talk. Because at the end of the day, peace is more valuable than proving a point. There's a quote I love. There are givers and takers. Takers may eat better, but givers sleep better. The wise would rather sleep in peace than win an argument. They'd rather walk away than waste energy on someone committed to chaos. This isn't weakness. It's wisdom in action. It's knowing that peace costs more than pride, and some things just aren't worth your clarity. So what do they choose instead? They choose simplicity over noise, integrity over approval, stillness over chaos. They don't chase 1,000 desires. They don't need every door to open. They're not fueled by how many people clap or criticize. They're fueled by clarity, by purpose. And when storms come, and they always do, the wise don't wait for sunshine to start living. They've learned how to dance in the rain, because here's something powerful. You can't control the storm, but you can control the rhythm of your steps. The wise take responsibility for their path. They don't blame. They don't delay. They move forward, with steady feet and an unshaken spirit. And finally, one of the hardest truths they've embraced. In someone else's story, you will always be the villain. No matter how kind you were, how honest, how much you gave to someone, somewhere, you will be misunderstood. And that's not something the wise fight anymore. They accept it, they forgive. Not because the other person deserves it, but because they deserve peace. Because carrying anger is like drinking poison and hoping someone else gets sick. It never works, it only weighs you down. So the wise let go. They don't try to rewrite someone else's version of the story. They simply stop starring in it. And yes, that means solitude. Growth often requires separation, not because you're better than others, but because you're becoming different than who you used to be, and not everyone is meant to walk with you through that transformation. So if the path gets quieter, if people drift away as you get clearer, don't panic. That's not punishment, that's proof. Proof that clarity creates distance, and wisdom knows how to honor it. So let me ask you, are you carrying pain? Are you trying to make sense of something that hurt you? If so, I want to remind you, you don't have to be defined by it. You can be refined by it. You can transform your pain into peace, not by denying it, not by hiding it, but by choosing how you carry it. Don't hand your healing to the crowd. Don't explain your wounds to those who only want the story, not your well-being. You are not your pain. You are what you choose to do with it. So take the hurt, sit with it, learn from it. Let it shape you, but not shrink you. And then, quietly, powerfully, rise. Part 3. A wise person walks away. Quietly. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to walk away, not in anger, not in defeat, but in quiet strength, because a wise person doesn't always win by staying. Sometimes they win by letting go. Let's be honest. In a world that glorifies hustle, noise, and constant connection, walking away can feel like quitting, like failure. But in the eyes of the wise, walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom in motion. They understand something most people never slow down long enough to realize. Clarity doesn't come from chaos. It comes from distance. Chaos doesn't always crash through the door. Most of the time, it creeps in slowly. One notification too many. One argument left unresolved. One commitment you didn't want to make, but said yes to anyway. And before you know it, your mind is cluttered. Your peace is compromised, and your direction completely blurred. This is why the wise practice the discipline of detachment, not as a way to escape, but as a way to reconnect. They don't detach because they're cold. They detach because they value clarity. When you're constantly plugged into the noise, the expectations, the opinions, you lose touch with the only voice that really matters, your own. That's why the wise step back, not to isolate, but to listen, not to run, but to realign. It's in the stillness that truth finally speaks. In solitude, the noise of the world fades, and the whisper of the soul becomes audible. The Stoics believed deeply in this. They understood that your emotional state often reveals your orientation in time. If you feel sadness, you're likely living in the past. If you feel anxiety, you're probably stuck in the future. But if you feel peace, you are present, and presence is where all your power lives. So the wise return to that place again and again, not through distraction, not through denial, but through stillness. They sit with their thoughts, they examine them, they trace the root of each emotion, not to control them, but to understand them, because you cannot master what you refuse to meet. There's a quote I love: "The man who walks alone is often going somewhere no one else has ever been." And that's the truth. The wise know that their path may not always be crowded. There might not be applause, there might not be agreement, there may even be rejection. But still, they walk, because they're not moved by popularity. They're moved by purpose. They don't seek validation for every step. They don't need a cheerleading squad to stay motivated. They know that their direction is sacred, and not everyone is meant to understand it. So they walk alone, if needed, but always, not to prove anything, but to protect something, their inner peace. But here's where many people struggle. They stay on the wrong path because they've already invested too much time in it. The wrong job, the wrong relationship, the wrong version of themselves. And they tell themselves, I've come this far, I might as well keep going. But the wise, they see through that illusion. They understand something most people avoid. The longer you stay on the wrong train, the more expensive the return trip becomes. So they stop, they pause, they recalibrate, and when necessary, they reroute. Because wisdom isn't stubborn, it's adaptable. And if the path no longer leads to peace, the wise are willing to change direction, no matter how far they've come. That's not giving up. That's growing up. And finally, the most powerful choice the wise make? They choose peace. Every time. Even if it means walking away from people they once loved. Even if it means releasing dreams that no longer serve them. Even if it means being misunderstood. Because here's what they've learned. Anger held too long becomes poison. Not for the one who hurt you, but for you. Bitterness builds quietly. It hides behind a kind face. But over time, it eats away at your joy. The wise don't let it. They let go, not because it's easy, but because peace is worth the price. They walk away from people who drain them. They walk away from environments that confuse them. They walk away from anything that costs more than it gives. And they don't waste energy trying to fix what isn't theirs to manage. They've made peace with a simple truth. You can't control everything, but you can always control your thoughts, your energy, and your choices. And when they walk away, they do it quietly. No announcements. No drama. No need for explanation. Just one step at a time toward peace. So if you're at a crossroads right now, if your mind is cluttered, if your heart feels heavy, if you know something isn't right but you've been afraid to walk away, this is your reminder. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to wait for clarity to appear from the outside. Clarity comes from stepping back, and peace comes from letting go. Not in rage, not in resentment, but with the quiet confidence of someone who's finally realized Their well-being is their responsibility. So step back, reevaluate, release what weighs you down, and walk forward, quietly, steadily, purposefully, because sometimes the loudest statement you'll ever make is the one you never say out loud. That is the Stoic way. That is wisdom in motion. That is the power of walking away quietly. Before we close today, I want you to take a moment and reflect. How often do you associate power with noise, with domination, with aggression, with being the loudest in the room? We're conditioned to think that strength looks like force, that success has to be seen, that wisdom must be spoken to be real. But the truly wise, they live by a different code. They know that real power often walks in silence. They've learned that the loudest one in the room is rarely the strongest. That the person constantly explaining themselves, constantly posting, constantly reacting, is often the one most unsettled. True strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It shows up in restraint, in stillness, in knowing when to speak and when to simply walk away. You see, we live in a world addicted to attention. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, validated. But wisdom doesn't scream. It listens. Peace doesn't beg for approval. It simply exists. It breathes, and it waits for you to come back to it. The wise understand this. They know that stillness isn't emptiness. It's clarity. It's where you meet your true self. It's where you stop performing and start becoming. When life gets loud, they don't react. They return to stillness, because they've learned that storms pass, but inner chaos stays if you feed it. And stillness? Stillness is the place where healing happens, where you sort truth from opinion, noise from purpose, pressure from priority. And here's something that might surprise you. Kindness is not weakness, it's power, under control. It's the strength to stay calm when insulted, to forgive when wronged, to stay soft in a world that often rewards hardness. That kind of discipline doesn't come from passivity. It comes from wisdom, from choosing your response, not being ruled by reaction. There's a quiet dignity in kindness that doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to prove anything, because it already knows what it carries. When someone walks away from drama, when they choose peace over proving a point, when they act from principle instead of pride, that's not fear, that's mastery. You don't have to share everything to be authentic. You don't have to explain your every decision to be understood. Some things are sacred. Your clarity, your energy, your peace. And the more you protect those, the more they protect you. That's the Stoic way. It's not about being cold. It's about being clear. It's about choosing not to entertain what costs your inner stillness. It's about knowing when to hold your tongue. Not because you don't have something powerful to say, but because your silence is even more powerful. You don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to react to every insult. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. A wise person knows this. Your life doesn't need to be loud to be meaningful. It needs to be intentional. You can walk gently and still move mountains. You can speak rarely and still command respect. You can be still and still be incredibly powerful. So the next time the world tries to pull you into chaos, remember, you don't owe the world your reaction. You owe yourself your peace. If this message resonated with you, if any part of you whispered, "This is what I needed to hear today," then I invite you to take a moment right now, not to comment, not to argue, not to explain. Just type 2 simple words. Stay silent. Let that be your quiet declaration, not to be invisible, but to say, I've chosen peace over performance, restraint over reaction, wisdom over noise. Because in a world that's always rushing, always shouting, always performing, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is to stand still, to walk away, to say nothing. and let your silence speak volumes. And if you want more content like this, if you want to walk deeper into a life of clarity, strength, and stillness, then consider subscribing. But only if it feels right. Because this isn't just a channel. It's a space for the few who are tired of chasing noise and ready to walk with intention. Until next time, protect your peace, honor your silence, and never forget. Wisdom doesn't demand attention. It quietly transforms everything it touches.